All right, let's go. In 1947, pilot Kenneth Arnold reported 9 unusual objects flying near Mount Rainier in Washington state, describing their movement as similar to saucers skipping across water. The press coined the term flying saucers, and within weeks, reports flooded in from across the United States. The military dismissed most sightings as misidentifications, whether balloons or atmospheric phenomena. For decades, this pattern continued. Witnesses reported anomalous aerial objects. Officials provided conventional explanations. The topic remained confined to fringe communities and late-night radio shows. Then, something changed. In 2017, the New York Times published a story revealing that the Pentagon had been operating a secret program investigating unidentified aerial phenomena. The article included declassified videos showing U.S. Navy pilots encountering objects that defied conventional explanation. 3 years later, the Department of Defense officially acknowledged these videos were authentic. By 2023, members of Congress were holding public hearings where military personnel testified under oath about encounters with objects demonstrating capabilities that exceed known human technology. The shift in official discourse represents more than acknowledgement that strange things appear in our skies. It represents recognition that these objects pose genuine threats to national security, not because we know they're hostile, but because we don't know what they are, where they come from, or what capabilities they possess. This ignorance in the face of superior technology creates vulnerabilities that adversaries, whether human or otherwise, could exploit. The congressional hearings revealed patterns of encounters spanning decades, systematic failures in investigation and reporting, and technological demonstrations that challenge our understanding of physics. What follows are 10 revelations from official government sources that transform unidentified aerial phenomena from curiosity to crisis. Number 10, the terminology shift that changed everything. In 2020, the Department of Defense officially replaced the term UFO with UAP, standing for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. This wasn't semantic preference. It was strategic rebranding designed to remove 7 decades of cultural stigma that had prevented proper investigation. The term UFO carried baggage. It implied flying saucers, alien visitors, and conspiracy theories. Military personnel who reported UFOs faced career consequences. Pilots underwent psychiatric evaluations. Intelligence officers lost security clearances. The institutional culture punished those who reported encounters, creating a system where silence was safer than honesty. The terminology change coincided with establishment of formal reporting channels and the creation of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, in 2022. For the first time since Project Blue Book closed in 1969, the U.S. government maintained an active program dedicated to investigating these phenomena. The establishment of AARO represented acknowledgement that decades of willful ignorance had created intelligence gaps. By discouraging reporting, the military had blinded itself to a persistent phenomenon occurring in restricted airspace. The question became how much data was lost during those decades of institutional denial. How many encounters went unreported because witnesses feared ridicule or retaliation? How many patterns remained undetected because the information was never systematically collected? The congressional testimony revealed that unofficial reporting had continued throughout the decades of official silence. Pilots discussed encounters in ready rooms but didn't file formal reports. Radar operators noted anomalous tracks but didn't escalate observations. The phenomenon continued regardless of whether institutions acknowledged it. By creating barriers to reporting, the government didn't eliminate the problem. It eliminated awareness of the problem, a distinction with profound implications for national security. You cannot defend against threats you refuse to recognize. The culture of denial meant that potentially critical intelligence about foreign capabilities or unknown phenomena was systematically discarded for half a century. Number 9. The Nimitz Encounter and multi-sensor confirmation. On November 14, 2004, the USS Princeton, an Aegis-class cruiser operating off the coast of San Diego, detected multiple radar contacts behaving unusually. The objects appeared at 80,000 feet, descended rapidly to 20,000 feet, and hovered before accelerating away. This pattern repeated over several days. The radar systems were operating normally. Weather conditions were clear. The contacts weren't migratory birds, weather balloons, or known aircraft. On the morning of November 14th, the Princeton directed to F-18 Super Hornets to investigate one of the contacts. Commander David Fravor, a decorated naval aviator with 18 years of flight experience, led the intercept. What Fravor encountered became one of the most thoroughly documented UAP cases in military history. Descending toward the coordinates provided by the Princeton, Fravor observed disturbance on the ocean surface, as if something massive was submerged just below the waterline. Above this disturbance hovered a white, oblong object approximately 40 feet in length with no visible wings, engines, or propulsion exhaust. The object had no markings, no windows, and no apparent control surfaces. When Fravor descended to investigate, the object began to mirror his movements, maintaining constant distance. Then it accelerated instantaneously and disappeared within seconds. The Princeton's radar detected the object 60 miles away at the Combat Air Patrol Point, where Fravor's squadron was scheduled to patrol next. The object had covered 60 miles in less time than seemed physically possible and had positioned itself at coordinates that were designated in classified mission planning. The significance of the Nimitz encounter lies not in eyewitness testimony alone, but in multi-sensor confirmation. The Princeton's an SPY-1 radar, one of the most sophisticated detection systems in the U.S. Navy, tracked the object. Fravor and 3 other experienced pilots visually confirmed its presence. Weapon systems aboard the F-18s registered the target. Multiple independent sensors using different physical principles all detected the same object performing the same impossible maneuvers. This eliminates explanations based on equipment malfunction, atmospheric phenomena, or observer error. When radar, infrared, and human observers all report identical data, the object is real. The acceleration characteristics observed exceed known engineering capabilities by substantial margins. The object went from stationary hover to supersonic speeds with no visible means of propulsion and no sonic boom. It executed maneuvers that would generate G-forces fatal to any biological pilot and destructive to any known aircraft structure. The technology demonstrated wasn't incrementally advanced. It represented capabilities that appear to violate understood principles of inertia, propulsion, and aerodynamics. If foreign adversaries possess such technology, American military superiority is illusory. If they don't, something else with equivalent or superior capabilities operates in U.S. airspace with impunity. The Nimitz case established that these weren't sensor glitches or misidentifications. These were physical objects demonstrating performance that shouldn't be possible. Number 8. The pattern of nuclear weapons facility intrusions. Robert Sollers served as an officer in the U.S. Air Force assigned to Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, responsible for monitoring Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missiles. On March 24, 1967, security personnel reported a red, glowing object hovering above the facility. Sollers was underground in the Launch Control Center when alarms indicated that missiles were going offline. Within minutes, 10 nuclear-armed ICBMs transitioned to no-go status simultaneously. Each missile had independent power systems, guidance computers, and communication links. There was no single failure point that could disable all 10 weapons at once. Yet something accomplished exactly that while an unidentified object remained overhead. Boeing engineers later confirmed that simultaneous failure across multiple independent systems was technically impossible under normal circumstances. The Malmstrom incident wasn't isolated. Similar events occurred at other nuclear facilities throughout the 1960s and 1970s. F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming reported objects hovering over missile silos. Naval weapons stations documented aerial phenomena during weapons handling operations. In 1980, personnel at RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge in the United Kingdom, facilities hosting American nuclear weapons, reported objects landing in nearby Rendlesham Forest and projecting beams of light toward the weapons storage area. Multiple witnesses, including Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, documented the incidents in official reports that remain declassified and publicly available. The 2025 congressional hearings revealed this pattern continues. Witnesses testified that nuclear facilities experience intrusions by unidentified objects at rates significantly higher than random chance would predict. Los Alamos National Laboratory, Oak Ridge, and operational ICBM fields in Montana and North Dakota all report persistent aerial phenomena. These aren't distant observations. These are objects hovering directly over the most sensitive weapons facilities in the American nuclear arsenal. The implications are profoundly uncomfortable. If these objects can disable nuclear weapons remotely, the entire doctrine of nuclear deterrence becomes questionable. Mutually assured destruction only functions if launch systems remain secure and operational. The testimony suggests they may not be. The targeting pattern implies intelligence and intent. These objects don't appear randomly across the landscape. They appear specifically at locations where nuclear weapons are stored, maintained, or deployed. This selectivity suggests either human adversaries with sophisticated intelligence capabilities or non-human intelligence with deep interest in humanity's most destructive technology. Neither scenario provides reassurance. If foreign nations can disable American nuclear weapons at will, strategic parity is fiction. If non-human intelligence possesses such capability, we face an asymmetric situation where potential adversaries control whether our weapons function. The pattern has persisted for nearly 60 years, suggesting sustained interest rather than random curiosity. Number 7. The Transmedium Capability Problem. On July 15, 2019, the USS Omaha, AN Independence Class Littoral Combat Ship, detected a spherical object operating near the vessel while conducting operations off the coast of San Diego. The ship's radar tracked the object as it maneuvered at various altitudes, demonstrating flight characteristics inconsistent with known aircraft, drones, or missiles. Then, the object descended toward the ocean surface. Crew members watched as it approached the water. Normal physics dictates that an object traveling at hundreds of miles per hour encountering water would create massive impact forces, generate an enormous splash, and undergo rapid deceleration. Water is approximately 800 times denser than air. The transition between these mediums produces violent effects on any known craft. The USS Omaha's sensors recorded something different. The object entered the water without any visible impact signature, no splash, no deceleration. It transitioned as if the density change didn't exist. Sonar operators then detected something moving underwater at speeds exceeding any known submarine. Transmedium capability represents a technological achievement that fundamentally challenges engineering principles. Aircraft are optimized for operation in air, with wings providing lift, engines designed for atmospheric conditions, and structures built to handle aerodynamic stresses. Submarines are optimized for underwater operation, with pressure hulls, ballast systems, and propulsion designed for high-density fluid environments. A platform that operates efficiently in both environments requires solving problems that human engineering hasn't approached. The density difference between air and water creates dramatically different drag coefficients, pressure loads, and propulsion requirements. An object entering water at aircraft speeds should be destroyed by hydrodynamic forces. An object designed for underwater operation shouldn't achieve the power-to-weight ratios necessary for atmospheric flight. Yet multiple incidents documented by military sensors show objects seamlessly transitioning between air and water. The USS Omaha incident wasn't unique. Other naval vessels have tracked objects descending into oceans and continuing to maneuver underwater. Pilots have observed objects emerging from water and accelerating to supersonic speeds. These observations appear in official reports with supporting sensor data. The strategic implications of trans-medium capability are profound. Current defense architecture divides responsibilities between air defense systems and anti-submarine warfare assets. Air defense radars and fighters protect against aerial threats. Sonar and torpedoes counter underwater threats. A platform that operates in both domains exploits the gap between these systems. It can evade air defenses by submerging. It can evade submarine detection by flying. The entire structure of naval defense assumes threats remain in predictable domains. Trans-medium craft invalidate that assumption. If adversaries possess such technology, they can approach targets via underwater routes that avoid aerial detection, then emerge for attack runs before submerging again. Traditional defensive systems aren't configured to counter this threat profile. Number 6. The aviation safety crisis no one is addressing. Lieutenant Ryan Graves served as an F-18 Super Hornet pilot conducting training operations off the east coast of the United States. In his congressional testimony, Graves stated that between 2014 and 2015, his squadron encountered unidentified objects nearly every day. These weren't distant observations. These were objects operating in the same airspace where pilots were conducting high-speed maneuvers, often at night, in conditions of limited visibility. The objects appeared on radar but often weren't visible until dangerously close. On one occasion, an object passed between two aircraft in his formation. The near miss occurred at closing speeds that would have resulted in catastrophic collision if contact had been made. The encounter rate Graves described isn't unique to his squadron. Pilots across multiple naval air stations reported similar experiences. Objects appeared in military operating areas during routine training. They violated airspace restrictions. They didn't respond to radio communication. They displayed no transponders or identification systems. Air traffic control couldn't identify them. Nobody knew who operated them or what their intentions were. Yet, they continued appearing in congested airspace where military and civilian aircraft conducted operations. The congressional testimony revealed that commercial aviation faces similar risks. Pilots file hundreds of reports annually with the Federal Aviation Administration describing encounters with objects that don't match known aircraft profiles. These incidents occur in controlled airspace near airports, during approach and departure phases when aircraft are most vulnerable and pilots are managing complex procedures. If a commercial airliner collided with an object exhibiting the mass and velocity characteristics observed in military encounters, the result would be catastrophic. Modern aircraft are engineered to withstand bird strikes and minor debris impact. They aren't designed to survive collision with solid objects traveling at hypersonic speeds. Yet, no systematic investigation process exists. Pilots file reports that disappear into bureaucratic systems without follow-up. The FAA doesn't maintain a dedicated office for investigating anomalous aerial phenomena. Air traffic controllers have no protocol for managing airspace. conflicts with unidentified objects that don't follow standard traffic patterns. The regulations and procedures that govern aviation safety assume all airborne objects are either authorized aircraft following rules or natural phenomena like weather that can be predicted and avoided. The existence of a third category, solid objects under intelligent control by unknown operators with unknown intentions, breaks the system. We're conducting hundreds of thousands of flights daily through airspace that may contain objects we can't identify, predict, or control. The aviation industry operates on safety margins calculated to prevent collisions with known threats. Unknown threats operating outside established patterns create risks that current safety protocols don't address. Number 5, the sensor sophistication problem. The gimbal incident occurred in 2015 when a U.S. Navy F-18 encountered an object off the East Coast displaying unusual characteristics. The encounter was captured by the aircraft's advanced targeting forward-looking infrared pod, a sophisticated sensor system manufactured by Raytheon specifically designed to detect and track objects of military interest. The infrared footage shows an object maintaining stable flight while rotating, behavior that defies conventional aerodynamics. The pilot's audio commentary reveals their confusion. They note the object's rotation while maintaining course and speed, something that shouldn't be possible for aircraft using aerodynamic lift. Wings and control surfaces only generate lift when properly oriented to airflow. An object rotating continuously should either tumble or experience dramatic changes in flight characteristics. This object did neither. What makes the gimbal incident difficult to dismiss is multi-sensor correlation. The object was detected simultaneously by the F-18's and APG-79 AESA radar, a phased array system that provides precise targeting data. The infrared sensor, using entirely different physical principles, detected the same object's thermal signature. The pilots obtained visual confirmation through their canopy. 3 independent sensors designed by different manufacturers, using different detection methods, all registered the same object performing the same maneuvers. This redundancy eliminates equipment malfunction as explanation. It's extraordinarily unlikely that radar, infrared, and human vision would all generate identical false readings simultaneously. More unsettling is evidence suggesting these objects possess their own sensor capabilities and situational awareness. Pilots report that objects seem to react when targeted by fire control systems. They maneuver to break radar locks. They accelerate when fighters attempt intercept. They maintain positions that suggest awareness of observer location and capabilities. This implies more than advanced propulsion. It implies sophisticated electronic warfare capability, threat detection systems, and decision-making processes that allow rapid response to changing tactical situations. If these objects are gathering intelligence on military capabilities, they're conducting remarkably effective reconnaissance. They appear during weapons testing. They observe training exercises. They position themselves to monitor operational patterns. This is exactly what intelligence-gathering platforms do. The difference is we don't know who operates these platforms, what data they're collecting, or what purposes that data serves. The sensor advantage extends beyond detection to apparent counter-detection capabilities. Some objects seem to minimize their radar cross-section dynamically, appearing and disappearing from radar while remaining visually observable. Others maintain thermal signatures inconsistent with their apparent speed and maneuverability, suggesting either exotic materials or active thermal management systems. These characteristics indicate deliberate engineering for stealth and survivability, not natural phenomena or equipment artifacts. We're observing what appears to be technology designed specifically to operate in contested airspace while evading detection and analysis. The sophistication suggests years or decades of development by entities with advanced understanding of sensor physics and countermeasure design. Number 4. The escalation pattern that indicates intent. Historical UAP reports from the 1950s through 1990s describe objects that generally avoided sustained contact with military aircraft. Encounters were brief. Objects departed when approached. The pattern suggested observation from distance rather than direct engagement. Recent incidents show behavioral changes. Objects no longer consistently avoid military platforms. They approach aircraft directly. They maintain positions over facilities despite detection. They demonstrate what military analysts describe as increased boldness, operating openly in restricted airspace without apparent concern for being observed. Between 2023 and 2025, multiple U.S. military installations reported sustained intrusions by formations of objects that appeared coordinated. RAF Lakenheath in the United Kingdom, which hosts U.S. Air Force operations including nuclear-capable aircraft, experienced repeated incursions by objects operating in patterns suggesting deliberate surveillance. Langley Air Force Base in Virginia reported similar activity. These weren't brief transits through restricted airspace. These were prolonged operations where objects maintained position for hours, suggesting either extraordinary endurance or nearby deployment bases. The behavioral shift implies changed assessment or objectives. Earlier avoidance of contact might have reflected caution, an intelligence-gathering phase where detection carried risks. Current behavior suggests either increased confidence, changed mission parameters, or assessment that concealment no longer serves their purpose. If these objects represent foreign adversaries, the shift indicates they've completed reconnaissance phase and moved to more aggressive posturing. They're demonstrating capabilities openly, possibly as deterrent or warning. If the objects represent non-human intelligence, the behavioral change might indicate conclusion of observation phase and transition to more direct interaction. Military responses to these incursions have proven ineffective. Fighters scrambled to intercept fine targets that outmaneuver them with ease. Ground-based air defense systems can track objects, but commanders remain reluctant to engage targets whose origin and intent are unknown. Shooting down an unidentified object risks triggering escalation with potentially catastrophic consequences if the object belongs to a foreign nation or represents something we don't understand. Yet, allowing unrestricted access to sensitive facilities creates its own risks. We're trapped between escalation danger and acceptance of sovereignty violations. The frequency increase suggests either growing numbers of objects or increased operational tempo by existing assets. Either interpretation carries implications. If more objects are present, whoever operates them is expanding presence, suggesting escalating interest in human activities or preparation for larger operations. If the same number of objects are conducting more frequent missions, operational tempo suggests urgency or approaching deadlines for whatever objectives drive their presence. Neither scenario suggests benign curiosity. We're witnessing what appears to be deliberate escalation by actors whose identity and intentions remain unknown. Number 3, the intelligence community assessment that admits ignorance. In June 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a preliminary assessment on unidentified aerial phenomena, the first official report of its kind in over 50 years. The document reviewed 144 incidents reported by U.S. government personnel between 2004 and 2021. Of these 144 cases, investigators could positively identify only one, which proved to be a large deflating balloon. The remaining 143 incidents lacked sufficient data for conclusive determination. The report explicitly states that 18 of these incidents demonstrated unusual flight characteristics. including remaining stationary in high winds, moving against strong winds with no visible propulsion, and maneuvering abruptly at high speeds. The language in the assessment is carefully constructed, reflecting intelligence community practice of precise terminology. The report does not conclude UAPs represent extraterrestrial technology. It also does not conclude they don't. It states available data does not permit conclusive determination of origin. This epistemological honesty is appropriate from scientific standpoint but creates strategic problems. Defense planning requires knowing capabilities and intentions of potential adversaries. When you cannot identify who operates advanced systems violating your airspace, you cannot assess threat levels, predict future actions, or develop effective countermeasures. The assessment considers whether UAPs might represent foreign military technology, specifically advanced systems developed by China or Russia. The analysis concludes there is no evidence supporting this hypothesis, but it cannot be definitively excluded. This creates an intelligence nightmare. If peer competitors have achieved technological breakthroughs that provide generational advantages in aviation, directed energy, materials science, or propulsion, then American military superiority is historical artifact rather than current reality. The entire force structure, procurement strategy, and operational doctrine of the U.S. military assumes rough technological parity with potential adversaries, perhaps with American advantages in specific domains. If that assumption is wrong, if adversaries possess capabilities that exceed American technology by decades or more, then existing war plans and defensive strategies require fundamental revision. Alternatively, if these objects don't represent human technology, then we face the even more complex problem of assessing capabilities and intentions of intelligence whose technological sophistication exceeds our own by unknown margins. We cannot negotiate with entities we cannot identify. We cannot establish deterrence with adversaries whose location, numbers, and vulnerability to retaliation remain unknown. Traditional security frameworks assume state actors operating under rational self-interest calculations. Non-human intelligence might operate under entirely different value systems, risk assessments, and decision-making processes that render human strategic thinking inadequate. The report acknowledges that lack of comprehensive data represents the primary obstacle to understanding. Decades of stigma prevented systematic reporting and investigation. Number 2, the institutional failure that enabled decades of blindness. The most damning revelation from congressional hearings isn't what UAPs are. It's that despite thousands of encounters spanning decades, the United States government made no systematic attempt to investigate them. Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO investigation program, closed in 1969 with the conclusion that no UFO had ever represented a threat to national security or demonstrated technology beyond human capabilities. This conclusion was based on methodology now recognized as inadequate. Investigators had strong incentive to explain away cases rather than acknowledge unknowns. From 1969 until creation of AARO in 2022, no official program existed to investigate UAPs. This gap of 53 years represents institutional failure of extraordinary magnitude. During this period, military personnel continued encountering objects in restricted airspace. Pilots filed reports that disappeared into administrative systems without analysis. Radar operators noted anomalous tracks that weren't systematically catalogued. The phenomenon continued regardless of whether institutions acknowledged it. By eliminating investigation programs while encounters continued, the government didn't solve a problem. It eliminated awareness of a problem, creating intelligence blind spot that potential adversaries could exploit. Multiple congressional witnesses testified about career consequences for reporting UAPs. Pilots faced psychiatric evaluations questioning their judgment and stability. Intelligence officers lost security clearances, ending careers. The institutional message was clear. Reporting these encounters was dangerous to professional survival. This created perverse incentive structure where self-interest demanded silence. The pilots with greatest integrity, those most committed to accurate reporting regardless of personal consequences, were systematically punished. Meanwhile, those who remained silent faced no consequences. The system selected for suppression of information rather than accurate reporting. The cultural barrier extended beyond individual career consequences. Military institutions cultivate professional identity around competence, reliability, and rational judgment. Admitting you saw something you couldn't explain contradicts that identity. It suggests failure of perception, failure of knowledge, or failure of reasoning. For officers whose entire career depends on demonstrating sound judgment, acknowledging inability to explain observations carried existential professional risk. This cultural pressure reinforced official discouragement, creating self-reinforcing system where silence was expected. The cost of these lost decades is incalculable. If UAPs represent foreign adversaries, we gave them 50 years of unrestricted intelligence collection. If UAPs represent non-human intelligence, we wasted 50 years where communication attempts and scientific investigation might have been developed. Number 1. The accountability void that remains unresolved. As of 2025, unidentified objects continue appearing in restricted airspace. Pilots continue encountering objects with inexplicable capabilities. The threat to aviation safety persists. Nuclear facilities remain vulnerable to intrusions we cannot prevent. Yet, comprehensive investigation remains underfunded, fragmented across agencies with competing priorities, and limited by classification restrictions that prevent full congressional oversight. We've acknowledged the problem exists but haven't implemented effective response. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office operates with limited budget and personnel. It cannot compel cooperation from military services or intelligence agencies that remain resistant to sharing data. Classification restrictions mean that even when investigations produce findings, those findings remain inaccessible to Congress, the scientific community, and the public. We've created a system where the problem is acknowledged but solutions remain bureaucratically impossible. Congressional committees with oversight authority cannot obtain complete information from executive agencies. Witnesses testify in closed sessions where classification restrictions prevent detailed testimony. Programs operate without congressional knowledge or authorization. Representative Tim Burchett stated during hearings that agencies are running secret programs that Congress doesn't fund, doesn't oversee, and wasn't informed exist. This represents breakdown of fundamental democratic governance principles. The scientific community remains largely excluded from investigation. Academic researchers cannot access classified sensor data. University laboratories cannot analyze materials if such materials exist. The expertise that could contribute to understanding scientists specializing in aerospace engineering, propulsion physics, materials science remains untapped because classification walls prevent collaboration. We're investigating the most advanced technology ever observed using tiny classified bureaucracy rather than leveraging full capabilities of American scientific establishment. The situation creates perfect conditions for continued ignorance. If conclusive data exists in classified programs, it remains inaccessible. If such data doesn't exist, no systematic collection program operates to gather it. We're watching slow-motion disaster where danger is acknowledged but effective response remains politically impossible. Every day, these objects operate in our airspace. They collect information about our capabilities, our patterns, our vulnerabilities. Whether they represent foreign adversaries, non-human intelligence, or something entirely unexpected. Our refusal to properly investigate might be the greatest strategic blunder in modern history. We see the threat, we acknowledge the threat, but we lack institutional capacity and political will to address the threat with seriousness it demands. The question isn't whether UFOs exist. Government officials have confirmed they do. The question is what happens next. The testimony suggests we're running out of time to decide. These objects are becoming bolder. Their capabilities exceed ours by margins we don't understand. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on the screen now and don't forget to subscribe.